Welcome back to the Broke Bat. I'm Queenie Black. I'm here with Lily. We're still in Montana. No, you can't get down and run around and try to get the critters. It's, it's what she's doing. I hope you had a good week. And I wanted to show you what I found this week. It's really cool. I actually didn't even plan on this, but it just happened. So I was just like, "Hey, this is will be a neat story." So, like I accidentally fell into one of those history rabbit holes. It starts with, "Hey, I should peacefully explore this cemetery," and it ends with, "Wait, this woman did what? She hired what to blow up what?" And that's how it started. So we're going to start talking about Mary Gleim. She was known as the Madam of Montana. So I was wandering through this Missoula cemetery, the Missoula City Cemetery, and I was looking for like maybe famous people that were buried there. And I came across the name Mary Gleim. And the deeper I dug into her story, the more it started sounding less like regular history and more like it's an episode of 48 Hours, but in the Old West. We got a crazy, cray cray dog today, trying to get the prairie dogs again. So, Mary was born in 1845 to Irish parents during the potato famine. She was highly educated, spoke multiple languages, and she was known to be quite strong, even though she was 5'4". With those kind of stats, you can see how she's starting to sound less like a real person and more like someone your grandma is telling some folklore about, right? And so it begins. You cannot go after the groundhogs. You have to calm down. I'm trying to do work here. No. In 1888, she marries a guy named John Gleim in London. And then they decide to come to Missoula, Montana. I'm in Montana right now. I'm not in Missoula, but I'm near Missoula. So this is where it starts emulating like a show or a movie. Okay. But since we're talking about Victorian times, we'll say the theater. She decided to open up a business. She's going to use her smarts. So she opens this business that is a female boarding house, quote, quote, under the guise of it being a furniture store. Victorian people like to act like everything's totally normal, like, no, officer, these women are simply extremely committed to interior design. All of these women that work in my furniture stores and live in my boarding homes. Somehow, within less than a year, she expanded to 8 commercial buildings downtown. 8. Think about that. That's not a side hustle anymore. That's an entire empire of wood, if you know what I mean. That's what she said. After a trip in Europe in 1890, she was detained in New York for allegedly smuggling lace into the country, like high end lace. And rumors also swirled that she was smuggling opium, diamonds, human cargo. Though Old West gossip and actual journalism, they're often in cahoots. So we don't know if that's completely true or not, but it could be. So there are lots of things going on, okay? But you know, because from the sounds of she wasn't running a church or anything like that. Long story short, in 1894, she was accused of hiring two men to blow up the home of her rival, Bobby Burns. So she's like, this guy is stealing all of the furniture business in this tiny town, because can you imagine? So, what was there, like 15 furniture stores? If this dude was running a business too, like that? Imagine being such a dramatic businesswoman that you go directly to explosives. You're not going to talk it out, you're just going to blow the guy up. So, long story short, one of the guys that she hired snitched on her. And then, so because he snitched, he didn't go to prison. But the other guy, Pat Mason, went to prison. Mary herself was convicted and sentenced to 14 years at the Deer Lodge prison, the one that I went to last week, the video that I made from last week, which was really cool. I didn't know that. So it's kind of cool that now I have a tie in from last week, right? So get this, she spends 13 months there, okay, because she couldn't come up with bail. There was like $7,000 bail or something, or no, it was more than that. But what she ended up doing, she waved her little black book at the men of the town and said, "Hmm, I don't have money for bail. What shall I do?" And what ends up happening? The men of the town came up with $7,000 and got her out of jail. Hmm, interesting, right? They really needed their dinettes and bunk beds. So then there was a retrial that happened, and there was issues that came out involving the witnesses and the juror, and like so much happened. The key witness, Bobby Burns, he ends up dying of a heart attack. And so she walked. She just got away with it. Obviously, this is a long story short story, but it's like the newspapers couldn't even decide what kind of a person she was. One editor described her as generous and kind hearted, and another called her a relentless hater. He probably didn't. He probably was a customer of the other guy. But honestly, isn't that the way it goes when it's a woman? If you're a badass business person, you're a BIT. But then again, she did try to blow up people. So honestly, that combination built the American West, though. And it's a foundation for a lot of old West movies and shows and stuff. So after this life of debauchery and crime, she dies from the flu in 1914. And she left behind a fortune that's worth millions today. It was like 140,000 around, or 148. It was like, I don't know the specific number, but it would be millions today. And she didn't have any kids herself. So it went to her niece, and I think her nephew too, says Lily. And yeah, so I don't know. You live this crazy life, and then you die of the flu. You'd think that she would have, like, it would have been something else, but that's the way it went back then. You died from the flu or toothache. Here's my favorite detail about this whole thing. So since she didn't have a will, she supposedly said that she wanted to be buried with her grave facing the railroad, as I've shown you, or as you see here, facing the railroad tracks, so she could wave to her boys as the train passed. I think that's a pretty cool little lore, and I wonder if it's true. But it's beautifully dramatic, isn't it? We're not um, glorifying the crimes and everything that she did, but just the whole story in itself is just so interesting. And it makes it just seem so much more like Old West. Of course, a madam would say that, you know? Say goodbye to my boys. Just gonna lay here and say goodbye to all the boys I loved before, or all the boys that paid my bills. This whole story is half truth and half myth, but she's now a legend. She's part of the Missoula, Montana lore. Montana lore. I think I'd like to see a show made about her and this whole story. She almost seems like she would be like a female version of Swearington. You know what I mean, from Deadwood. So that would be super interesting. Get on that, somebody. But you have to make sure that she's depicted correctly. She was a she was very short, very voluptuous. So we can't have no Nicole Kidman playing her, which they would probably do. That was the story of Mary Gleim and her grave. And I love how I just organically found this story. Didn't know anything about it, you know. So we'll see what happens next week. And I think I'll have another adventure that I'm going on, but we'll see. This one was a little chaotic because Lily's going nuts up here on the hill. There she goes again. But I hope you I hope you enjoyed this little bit of history that I discovered, cuz I think it's pretty cool. Pretty dang cool. One other thing I wanted to mention was I'm sure you saw the post that I made that the lovely Timu website stole some of my artwork and was selling it for cheap because it was cheap knockoff versions of it. Thankfully, I was able to file IP infringement against them, and there was about 100 listings on there that got taken down. So thank you to everybody or anyone that ever sends me questionable things. Is this your artwork? Is this your art? Sometimes it's not, and sometimes it is, but I super appreciate it. Community is everything, you know. So, and helping out artists like this is the best way to do it. So, um, yay. I was wondering why those particular ones, the sales had dropped, mysteriously dropped after they were like some of my best sellers. And now, wow, they're starting to sell again in my Etsy shop. So, yeah, they sold quite a bit of the cheap versions. Wasn't happy about that. But it's happened to me over the years. You know, I think I probably still have patches of my old Pocket Full of Posies characters still floating around from 20 years ago when they stole those too. So anyway, yeah, that's what sucks about doing things now. So that kind of ties in with this week, with being this week and last week was all about crime, wasn't it? The reason why I brought the Timu thing up is because, like I said, everything is always working out. You know, I may not, I may not recoup all the money that they stole from me by stealing my artwork. And I'm now making sales on my official shop again of those particular ones. But I always try to look on the bright side too. Like, but there's, you know how many people shop on that stupid website? I always look at it like, wow, so many people has seen my artwork, you know? So I like to look on the bright side of things. Oh my God, she looks so cute running though. I'm so mad at her, but she's so cute. Shoot. So remember, everything is always working out for you, but don't overthink it. Let's try not to overthink. You know, immediately when that happened, I like went, oh my God. But then I was just like, all right, what are we going to do now? Because whoa, because I've had it happen before. All right, ma'am. Let's make next week not about crime and maybe about nature. Lovely, the beautiful nature that I'm in. But we like to do variety. Variety. Remember to watch Portraits Without Looking on Friday. I think it's Dracula. I think I'm doing Dracula this week. And tune in next week to see what other adventure I go on, and if Lily's going to knock the camera down 100 times again. Whoa! Whoa! Don't. Okay. So, this has been the Baroque Bat with Crazy Lily. Now she's wrapped herself around the tree. So I got to go. But have a good week. And thank you for liking and subscribing, even though I said I wasn't going to say that, but I super appreciate it. Bye. I got to go get Lily.